Flying Fish. Written by Fana Fantarama. Read by Arashi. Flayn hummed as she rocked her head, her elbows against the balcony, thinking about what delicious, mouth-watering fish she would eat today. With her eyes shut, she daydreamed about the moist, scaled texture of the freshly plucked fish. When she opened her eyes, she gasped. There! In the sky! Was it a Pegasus? Was it a wyvern? No. It was a fish. A flying fish. And yet, it had no wings. It danced across the sky, not having any destination in mind. Flayn could barely stop herself from salivating. She wanted, needed, that fish in her belly. She was also curious how such a thing could be possible. Perhaps cutting it open would provide her an answer, as well as a pleasant lunch. Flayn heard footsteps behind her and turned. It was Sept, who had a blank face, dismissively unaware of the fish. Flayn pointed to the flying fish. Sept looked, and his eyes widened. As soon as he got over the shock, it was clear to Sept that Flayn wanted the fish. It shouldn't be difficult to pluck it from the sky, Sept figured, especially since he knew a thing or two about flying himself. Sept whistled, and his wyvern appeared from the skies. Sept climbed onto the wyvern, and Flayn quickly did too. He sighed. While he'd rather she stay on the ground, he had a feeling she was coming no matter what. So, Sept tugged on the wyvern's reins and took flight over Garreg-Mach Monastery. The cool wind blew across Set's face, but not strong enough to obscure his objective from his sight. The fish, a small herring, had no clue that its time had come. It moved across the blue sky in a wavy pattern, almost as if it weren't flying, but rather swimming. Truly peculiar, Sept thought. Sept stretched his wrist as his wyvern got closer and closer to the fish. He reached out for the tail of the beast and, as the wyvern flew past, clasped his hand shut. The fish barely moved out of the way and was flying away at full speed. Flayn grumbled and pouted. A vein grew in Set's forehead. How dare that impudent fish dodge him? Sept yanked on the wyvern's reins. The wyvern flapped its wings at full force, chasing after the dastardly fish. The fish didn't have as much weight as the wyvern, but it didn't have wings, which made it easy to catch up to. Sept reached out his hand and tried to snatch the fish as it flew side by side, yet he still kept missing. And now the fish was flying higher, out of reach. Sept clenched his teeth hard, causing jaw pain. He couldn't let it get away. But at this rate, it will get away, and the wyvern will wear out eventually. Hands gripped onto Set's shoulders. Flayn climbed on his back, a look of pure determination on her face, settling her legs on Set's shoulders. While she was short, the support from Set's body was just enough to put her in reach of the fish. Flayn thrust her arm out, trying to grab, but the fish dodged her closing fist by mere inches. Flayn pouted, but that wouldn't be enough to stop her. She lifted a leg, placing her foot on Set's shoulder. Then she pushed her weight off, jumping after it. Flayn belted out a shout of victory as she grasped the fish with both hands. It tried to escape, but she held it within a death grip. It felt just like any other fish. No abnormalities at all, other than the whole flying thing. With the fish finally in her possession, Flayn could already envision the tasteful glee it would give her. Just one problem. Flayn was falling. Fast. She briefly wondered if her will and testament still hadn't faded after all these years. Then shrugged. Once Sept realized the nature of Flayn's stunt, he yanked on the wyvern's reins, chasing after the falling girl. A tear forced its way out of his eyes as morbid thoughts ran through his head. No, he would never let it happen. He couldn't. If he let the worst happen, he may never live with himself. While Sept was freaking out over the gravity of the situation, Flayn didn't seem particularly panicked about flying through the sky. Her face was more curious than anything as she held her fish to her chest, watching Sept rush after her. On a whim, Flayn lifted her arms, holding the fish above her head. Suddenly, she stopped falling. The fish acted as a paraglider, gliding her to safety. Sept and his wyvern stopped in the air, eyes widening. Flayn descended onto the balcony safely, all thanks to that lovely-smelling fish. Sept followed, landing his wyvern and hopping off. Flayn hopped in joy, holding the fish to the sky. Sept was utterly bewildered by what just happened, but he still smiled, happy to see Flayn happy. With the fish in their possession, they walked off, planning to dissect it and hopefully discover the mystery behind it. But, more likely, they'd just have a tasty meal for the day.